It is Monday and it is time for another Top 5. And we are going to be looking today at the top 5 ways to protect your online data. Now, I wanted to write down a few different notes. And I was like, there's way more than top 5. So I isolated this down into kind of 2 groups, and I'll cover the other group in another day. So today we're going to talk about things you can do on your computer to protect your personal data. And then another time we'll go ahead and cover top 5 ways you can protect your personal data with offline, like online type resources, things like that. But I went ahead and identified 5 good ways that you can protect your online data, focusing specifically on your computer. So let's go ahead and dive into these. Number 1, it goes without saying, switch to Linux. Your big operating systems being your Windows and your Mac, they do a lot of data collection. Now on the Mac, you can go in easily and shut off a lot of the data collection. On Windows, you don't have a choice. I'm not going to go into it on this video, but on a lot of my other videos, I've went into what exactly Microsoft collects on the basic setting, which you cannot turn off. Now, if you have a lot of experience with shell scripts, or you have a Windows Enterprise Edition where you can access the group policies, you can turn off some more of that type of data collection. But regardless, Windows collects a lot of data on you. So the first thing you can do is switch to Linux. And this doesn't necessarily mean everywhere switch to Linux. What it means to me is that there's times and places you're still going to want to use other operating systems, and that's perfectly okay. But when it comes down to your personal stuff, you're looking up your medical issues, you're, checking out your banking, you're doing online information, you're doing that kind of stuff, you should do all of that private stuff that you possibly can on Linux. Now, that might mean you dual boot a computer. That might mean you do what I do and have a lot of flash drives laying around, run Linux on little flash drives. It might mean you have multiple different computers. It might mean you have 2 hard drives in your one computer and you manage 2 different operating systems on that one computer. Whatever that means, figure out how to use Linux more often than not, because Linux, for the most part, does not collect data. I should also go ahead and say right now, once you're on the internet, you're automatically going to be suspect to leaking data. So be aware of that. But regardless, switching to Linux is a very good way to prevent all of that data collection. Number 2, manage your host file. Okay, the host file on a computer is the file that will dictate what websites go to. So there's this whole thing called DNS. And basically this will redirect websites using the pretty little names into all those crazy numbers. Well, there's several layers of DNS, and the closer you get to your actual computer, the more control you have over the websites you go to. So, for example, if you're just out there on the internet, you're utilizing whatever DNS is on your ISP, which is a scary thing. And that's one of those dangers with net neutrality, is they can start tinkering with DNS a little bit. But regardless, we're not going to dive into that here. But you can also deploy DNS on a router level. So that's what I do here in my office, so I don't have to mess with the DNS on any of the individual computers, is that I manage all my DNS on the router level. And that way, when I'm in my office, all of those things I want to run will run here. Now, my mobile computers that I'm out and about with, I do manage some DNS on those, but a lot of the computers in my office don't actually leave my office. So it's a great way managing your host file. So if you don't know how to do that, you can usually just go online and find some information. So this one here is from Rackspace, how to modify your host file. The idea is that in the host file, you will have some numbers here, and your numbers will dictate your the IP address that the thing should go to, and the domain name here dictates the domain that it's coming from. And by the way, your mouse is not synced up with my mouse online, it doesn't look like, so I don't think I'm hovering over the same things you're seeing on the mouse. But regardless, what you want to do then is, if you want to block a website, like if you want to block Facebook, you would type in 127.0.0.1 space Facebook and 127.0.0.1 space www.facebook.com. So that's what you would do in order to do that. Okay, so you can grab these information, from online. Just do a simple internet search for, changing your, how to change your host file, and you can get it. Now, this one here is nice. The downside is almost every one of these, if you are running Windows, there is a step these guys always forget. That is, you need to go into your control panel, into your folder options, and show file extensions, which you should always do anyway. The reason is Windows started releasing this thing somewhere around Vista, where they would hide extensions for known files. The problem is this is way more problematic than you imagine. It's like, it looks nice for the end user, but then you get an email file that says, really cool doc, and it's really cool doc, .doc, DOC. You're like, oh, document file, no problem. The problem is that's a doc.exe, and the fact that your operating system is hiding your extensions, you don't know it's an exe, you think it's a document file. That's why you should always turn on extensions on a Windows computer. The reason you have to do this when you're editing a host file is because if you follow these instructions and you do not have extensions turned on, then it's going to save the file. Instead of saving it back as hosts like it's supposed to, it will save it as hosts.txt. You don't want that to happen. So change that first, and then make sure you're saving it as hosts. It has to be hosts, not hosts.txt. Anyways, following the other instructions for Windows, all of the Windows was the same. Of course, if you're running Windows 10, then your Windows Defender is going to start yelling at you, and, deal with that. Just tell it, yes, I know I'm modifying the host file, deal with it. Now, on Linux and on Mac, it's the same way. Just access the terminal, and then you go into sudo nano etc hosts, and then you make the changes that you want to make. Hold Control, push X, and it's the same on a Mac. It's not Command X on a Mac. It's Control X on a Mac. On a regular Linux computer, Control X, hit Y to save that file. So that's how you adjust the file. Now, if you come to my website at switchtolinux.com/privacy-resources, I actually have here a host file you can download. This is the host file that gets deployed across my network. This will block all the advertisers, all of the data trackers, the Bitcoin miners that's been going around. It blocks the session replay that allows websites to track what you do on a site even when you're not actually submitting data. It blocks all those scripts, and it blocks bad websites on the internet. So it does all of those things. You can grab a copy of that host file from my website. So that's how you manage your host file in order to help with that. Number 3. Look for different web browsers. Several of the web browsers out here in the world will collect some data. So like Chrome is one of the most popular web browsers these days. Chrome, though, scoops up everything you do on the internet and ships it on back to Google. If you have a Google account and you're logged in, because they like you to be logged in when you're using Chrome, they annoy you with that, they're attaching it all to your Google profile. If you do not log in, they track it to your IP address and then make a very good best case scenario as to who you very well might be. And so I don't use Chrome for those reasons. Is it a good browser? Sure, it does its job. But just because it's a good browser and it does its job doesn't mean that I necessarily want to be using that. Now, Firefox itself, Mozilla. My trust in the Mozilla has been waning as of late. And I did some videos about that, but as I'm recording this video last night, Brian Lunduke did another video looking at some of the shenanigans in the Mozilla Corporation. And that's one of those things to keep in mind, is that even Firefox now, we have to really ask what's going on. And so what I've been doing is I've been slowly converting my computers over to WaterFox, which is basically utilizes the open source Firefox code. But what these guys have done at WaterFox is they have taken out all of the trackers. So here's what WaterFox features. They have disabled the DRM and the EMEs, which you can re-enable if you want to, but it is disabled by default. they disable run web time. They remove the telemetry, the data collection. There's several different things that they do in this browser to make it a lot more of a system. So this is a much better browser now than Firefox in my estimation. I'm still using Firefox on some of the computers, but I have been slowly moving my computers over to WaterFox. This computer is running WaterFox, and both of my web development computers are now running WaterFox as the default, because I just don't know what Firefox is up to right now. And it's with that much uncertainty and the fact that WaterFox exists, I went ahead and did that. You can use Chromium as well. This is, of course, the open source project that Chrome is based on. And this guy here, it is an open source. It does have a lot of the same things Google can do, but it does not have all of the tracking and telemetry built in. I don't remember if it has DRM built in. And there's some other browsers out there as well. So here is some other lists. So, Epic Privacy Browser, I've never heard of them, but that's one. Komodo Dragon, I've not heard of that. Brave is on the list here. Brave it's not one of my favorites. I find that some of the things that Brave does is a little unscrupulous in that they will remove ads from your browsing experience. But then if you have a Brave account, they will re-inject ads back in. And so what that means is that if I have a website which I host ads on, and I'm doing so appropriately and non-intrusively, what happens is they are going to, in their browser, they're going to strip my ads off the site, hurting my revenue, and then their users will be able to look at the site, see those ads, and then that user of my website will get paid rather than me get paid for visiting my website. I find that unscrupulous. And so in that matter, I don't recommend the Brave browser. I find that they would turn around and say, hey, we're going to offer clean things and replace the ads that would be loaded by your network with our network and you still get your same cut, I'd be okay with it. But they don't. They're unscrupulous, in my opinion. Tor is also on the list, and the reason I don't always jump up and say use Tor is because if you're not using a Tor-centric system like Tails or Cubes or Whonix OS or one of those other ones like that, then you have to rely on the Tor browser bundle. And the problem with the Tor browser bundle is it can leak DNS. Now, that's solving a different problem, mind you. Tor is great to make sure that the companies you're visiting their site don't track down who you are. Tor does do that pretty well. It might be better to use that than nothing at all. Certainly better to use Tor than Chrome, except for the speed issues on Tor. That's another reason I don't always recommend it. However, I do use Tor quite a bit on several other computers, and on my Android phone runs everything through Tor. So it's not a bad idea. It's just it can be a little bit slower. I didn't specifically include it. If you want just a regular speed browser, WaterFox, Chromium, they're not going to be reporting your web usage data to other people. Number 4. Well, we are talking about web browsers. Use web browsers tactically. What do I mean by tactically? Well, the thing is that web browsers will collect the data they collect, store that information in cookies. Now, if you have Flash enabled across your browser, then you can have cross-browser cookies being shared. So you want to disable Flash and everywhere that you can, so you're not sharing cookies across multiple browsers. But the reason I use Chromium and WaterFox separately is that I will stay logged into my YouTube account on Chromium, and I only use that for YouTube and other Google related things. But I keep WaterFox completely separate. So while they can track it to the same IP address, what they have a hard time doing is identifying it as the same exact person. And, it could be 2 people living in the house, and Google wants to be as precise as they can, so it will trick their algorithm a little bit if we do that. And so using your web browsers tactically means you have one web browser that you stay logged in with, and you never use that browser except for on the accounts you need to stay logged in with, and then you have another browser for a general purpose. So I actually have 4 browsers now installed on my Android phone. I actually did move my Android phone over to WaterFox as well, so that is going to be my primary searching browser. And then I have Chromium and Firefox on here as well for kind of auxiliary backups. But I have the default Lineage OS browser installed, which is the only browser that does not run through the Tor network. And so that way I have 3 browsers running on Tor network, 1 primary one, 2 if I need to log into different accounts, and then I have 1 that runs on the clear internet. So using browsers tactically will prevent companies from attaching your login to everything else you do on the internet. Because if you log into Google and you stay logged into Google, they know every other website you're doing and they will link that into your specific Google account. Now, because of their analytics. If you're not logged into Google, they can track it back to an IP, but they can't attach it to your actual account. They can make a guess, but it's not always accurate, and so they don't do that. And so using browsers tactically is a really good way of doing that. Number 5. Use privacy-focused search engines. Another challenge with using Google, Bing, Yahoo. They will track your data and attach it to a profile. Not as much Yahoo. Yahoo's just scary with all these hacks. But they will track that data and store it into a profile based on you. And so that being a little challenge, we want to make sure that we are doing whatever we can to not give Google all of the specific information. So the 2 search engines that I would recommend you use would be Startpage. So Startpage will get you Google results, but they are not filtered by who you are. This is a question a lot of people say. A lot of people are like, why do you use Startpage? It still uses Google. The difference is, and here's the difference, what they do. If I go to Google and type in a search, it gives me information based upon what my profile and IP address will show, which means it gives me results it thinks I want to see. When I do a search through Startpage, it still uses Google's algorithm, but they strip all that information out and they return results that are more pure based upon nothing, just the search results. So it's unfiltered results, because you cannot deny that Google is still the leading in the industry for giving you search results. Startpage allows me to have those without introducing my own biases into my search results. I want it to give me information that I want to see, not the information that Google wants me to see. And that's why I use Startpage. Now, if you want a completely independent browser that does not use Google, then look for DuckDuckGo. These guys I've not used classically because their search functionality was not quite as good, like their results page, but it is definitely getting better. This is to the point now where I can actually use it. If you go back and see DuckDuckGo, the earlier times I was complaining about it, everything was mono text, mono color. It was hard to see the results. I really like this now. This is really good. There is nothing that's preventing me from using DuckDuckGo other than the fact I like Startpage. So either one of these 2 are going to make sure that whatever search engine you're using, they're not storing your IP, they're not producing a profile on you, and they're not selling that information to advertisers. And those are those things I want to avoid with Bing and with Google as the other leading web engines. You want to make sure that they're not getting that information. So those are my top 5 ways to protect your online data with respect to your computer, those things that you can do. And I'd encourage you to look into putting some of those into practice and let me know what your tips are. And then another week, maybe next week, maybe a couple weeks from now, we will go ahead and cover the top 5 ways to protect your online data as far as online and cloud type services. And there's going to be a little bit of crossover. So thank you for watching. If you would like to help support what we're doing, you can check out switchtolinux.com/support to learn about the current ways you can help support us. As of right now, we have Patreon, patreon.com/TomM, and there are Amazon links down below that if you want to go ahead and do some shopping on Amazon, it doesn't cost you anything more, but Amazon will send me a small percentage of that sale. That percentage seems to be about 2.5% approximately. So that's another way that you can help us out. So thank you for watching, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.